Hi guys, I'm not sure why this lying charlatan was extracted from whatever rock he was living under in order to conduct interviews again. Incidentally, he's never been called out on his lies. Anyway, Dominic Cummings gave an interview to GB News, of course GB News, about immigration. Now in this clip he claims that him and Boris Johnson had an idea of a visa scheme which would keep what they called low-skilled people out, but that the Treasury wanted something else. Now, this guy either doesn't understand immigration and the economy or is pretending not to. I'll leave it up to you to decide which.
Essentially what they did was they completely opened the floodgates and they started processes like cheating the high-skilled issue. So when we said high-skilled, we meant people with PhDs in astrophysics, people who can actually come and be professor of whatever or be some hotshot doctor in the NHS. What they then did was they redefined high-skilled immigration as low-skilled people to come in and do social care. Because the Treasury said, we need all of these people to come in cheap, and because the Treasury's view of the world is the Ponzi scheme on immigration is central to the Treasury economic model. You bring in a whole load of unskilled people, and then your models say, oh, they'll pay taxes because they're young, blah, 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 blah. And then when they're old, oh, well, then you bring in another wave of people, and the Ponzi scheme keeps going. Inside the Treasury, this is regarded as sensible. Most of the country regards it as completely insane.
Okay, there's so many things to respond to here. First of all, he's describing, it seems, care workers as unskilled or low-skilled. What is Dominic Cummings' skill? I'd love to know. Is it lying? Is it being a charlatan? Is it convincing people to vote against their own interests? Then he's highly skilled. He convinced people on two occasions, one when it came to Brexit, and the second, of course, when it came to getting Boris Johnson into number 10. So he's very good at convincing people to vote against their own interests and use lies in order to achieve that. Highly skilled. Now, his Brexit resulted in a shortage of workers. So what the government did was, well, what we're going to have is we're going to have a highly skilled visa system. And then they realized, actually, we don't have all the workers we need. It's going to limit our access to workers. And of course, because the UK left the European Union and ended freedom of movement, it wasn't able to access the workers it needed. So it had to bring in the shortage occupation list, which was a loophole, a way of getting around the high visa system that Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings wanted to put in place. A shambles. So still at that stage, the care sector, hospitality, agriculture couldn't get the workers they needed. Truck drivers. There weren't enough truck drivers. Do you remember that at the beginning of Brexit, where they ended up changing the rules so that they made the tests easier, like you didn't have to reverse an articulated truck? That was one of the changes to make it easier for people to become drivers. That was a clever approach, thanks to Dominic Cummings and Boris Johnson. No apologies for that, unfortunately. So they created a system that didn't work, and now he's describing immigration as a Ponzi scheme. But it's not a Ponzi scheme if you are also training up your own staff. Now, he, of course, omitted that bit. But if you rely on just bringing people in from abroad, yes, it's not going to work. But the Treasury doesn't focus on long term. They focus on the now. And you can have some criticisms against that sort of approach. But you created this problem. This was not really a problem before. You and Boris Johnson and the other Brexiteers created this massive problem. You didn't say it would be a problem before. This sort of oracle that's held up as Brexiteers, this is a wonderful guy, really intelligent. Well, he didn't predict all these problems. No, he said there would be no problems. And then the problems arrived, and then it's somebody else's fault, like a Tory would say. So now we need to get away from this Ponzi immigration system. Not really a Ponzi scheme, but once again, he doesn't seem to understand a lot of things. It's, in the long term, perhaps not a viable system. You can't just rely on immigrants. You need to also train up your own. But then in order to train up your own, you need to invest. You need to raise money. You need to raise taxes. Now, do you think Dominic Cummings is off the idea of increasing taxes to fund training up of British people to work in many different sectors? Well, I'll leave it to you to decide if he's on board with increasing taxes. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.